on there.
One, two, three.
Just a couple of things that I wanted you to think, points to ponder as you go back. You are the target audience. Say you're talking to a 34 or 35-year-old SEC A1 living in New Delhi, and we want to target some brands to you. So we have a luxury brand. I just wanted to hear a luxury brand sound. Let's see how it sounds. Let's hear it.
Quand tu me regardes, regarde-moi. Ici au bout d'un souffle. Ici au bout d'un.
This is just one of the examples. You know, there are many luxury brands, and the kind of sound that you want to find out in a place when you walk into a Gucci store or a Louis Vuitton store is this. Why? There's a big reason. Research has constantly proven that the more complex the sound, the more multiple genres you're trying to combine, the less you understand about what constructs the music, what puts it together. So this is like an influence of 10 different genres of sound. It's exotic sound. So when you want people to pay more for your products, you better make sure that your sound is something that people just don't understand. But it sounds good, it's exclusive, it sounds really brilliant, and it gives you a feeling of, you can even use spa music, you know, spa music always makes you feel good. So there's spa, there is electronica, there is hip hop, there is classical music, all that comes together in what they call luxury brand sound. So with that, I will call in Uday, and yeah, and Uday is here from Bombay, all the way for us.
Time was when everything was right.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot. It's good to be here. I was pretty intrigued when Shouvik asked me to come and speak to a gathering of Delhi's advertising bunch, and I said, wow, I've never done that before. Well, my perception of how music has been changing, musical tastes in India, and I would imagine outside this country as well, because it's a smaller world these days. Everyone's connected now. Everyone has access to the same thing, which was not the case in the 80s when I joined Rock Machine, then it was called. When I started in the band, one basically had to be a cover band, which meant cover tunes are popular songs by, pretty much Western bands, Western rock bands, that audiences over here didn't have the opportunity to go and see them live, and so expected a local version of that. For us, it was never enough, because the reason why we became musicians was because we wanted to express how we felt. We loved playing songs by Steely Dan and Thin Lizzy and The Who and bands of the time. But as much as it was fun to play that stuff, there was no more fun than writing one's own material and playing it before an audience. But when an audience is essentially a mass of bias against Indian bands, and unfortunately that was the mindset of the time, was an Indian band can't really be writing their own material. So then you've got to find a loophole. And we in India, I think, are most adept at finding loopholes when there's a problem situation. So we started to lie. We wrote our songs and we slipped them in. And because music wasn't as easily accessible then as it is today, we could easily fake the idea that this was a song by some band in the West that had just been released. And of course, we're musicians, so we have access to this. And there's no radio, so you wouldn't know. And we would throw on one of our songs and say, this is a song by whoever, And if the reaction was good, and happy to say that more often than not it was, we would sort of let them in on that little secret and say, hey, it was ours actually. We had our own prejudices, just like the audience had their bias initially towards Indian bands writing their own material. We had our own bias about using Indian instrumentation. This is a malaise, I guess, in the westernized, especially the South Bombay westernized rock musician idea, was that if you use an Indian instrument, you're sort of cheapening the whole thing. And our drummer at the time, Mark Menezes, said, why don't we use the tabla in this? And we were like, man, what are you talking about? Tabla, crap. We're not a fusion band or rock band and stuff. But it was a ballad, and he used really great sound, very, very sound philosophy, which was, he's saying if I suggested congas or a djembe or something that was non-Indian, not traditionally Indian, but still a traditional, what we would refer to as ethnic percussion from another part of the world, you would have no hesitation in sort of agreeing to that. And he sort of broke a barrier in our heads at that point because it made absolute sense. We called Fuzzle into the studio, and when he recorded it, it just sounded absolutely great. So that was our first exploration with moving beyond just the traditional rock sound. So we said, okay, we hired a British manager because we wanted to take the band outside the country, and he suggested a name change, which we were very resistant to, but finally understood that even though people know us as Rock Machine, it makes sense to change this name because it gives us more of an Indian identity. When I moved back to Bombay 2 years ago, for me, I think what I saw was just the most fantastic change in the Indian music culture, was the fact that bands today are expected to play their own material. And for me, that is just a massive leap forward, because I can't even tell you how difficult it was in those early days, just trying to get this message out, we can do our thing. And now a generation has come, taken away, has wiped out a previous generation's prejudices and said, yeah, we want to hear Indian bands express themselves in their language. When I say their language, I mean English, Hindi, Bengali, whatever it is. And that's become the norm now, which I think is probably the most phenomenal movement forward with Indian music.
The night is come, it's time to sleep. And let the willows gently weep.
For me, as a 17-year-old, when I discovered rock, when my brother came home from college one day, I was in school. My brother's 6 years older than me. And he went to St. Xavier's College and came home one day and put this tape in the tape recorder. Yes, those days. And the sound that came out of it just completely blew my mind. It was a transformative experience. It was an album called Quadrophenia by The Who. And until then, I'd been listening to ABBA and stuff and all the stuff that my friends were listening to in school. And I was like, holy man, what is this? And I became a devout rock fan, and that was it. Anything that existed outside of that was not my thing. Now with everything getting completely connected with the internet, I won't even call it unfortunate, but the inevitable move towards being able to download music for free. The effect of that, of course, is it's completely revolutionized music the world over. Record companies have become less relevant, EAP, RIP, and if you're a musician, you know my feeling. They've been screwing musicians over for too long. When record companies were in control of what was being distributed, you were only getting these very, very, very specific, narrowly defined kinds of music that sat on a particular shelf in a store, and it's all part of that marketing synergy. You created a genre because you could then place it in a particular spot in Tower Records because there was limited shelf space. And what you necessarily did as a result of that was you narrowed everyone's own understanding of what music was, because you forced them, or you pretty much pointed them only towards certain forms of music. That's completely gone now. Tower Records, the big music chain in the US, has gone under their history. I've just been to a bunch of music conferences recently. Everyone sits on a panel and sort of sounds deep but doesn't really have very much to offer because they're all trying to understand what to make of this new business. One of the great things about the new business is that it's actually widened everyone's point of view, everyone's attitude towards music. Whereas at one time people were genre specific in their taste, it's much less so today. More and more people will listen to a very, very, very wide range of music. Here's the internet for you. There's a band called Porcupine Tree from the UK. I had actually never heard of them, and I'm looking out for stuff, and I discovered they're actually pretty big in Europe. IIT Bombay brought down Porcupine Tree to play, and it was one of the finest rock concerts I've been to in my life. I mean, these guys are just absolutely brilliant. And as it turns out, the singer and the guitar player and their producer was nominated for a Grammy for Best 5.1 Surround Mix of an album. So the kind of stuff that's available out there, it's like a Pandora's box of Turkish delights, just bouncing off of you. For me, being on stage and interacting with an audience, and I think having been in the audience many times and interacting with a band that's up on stage, it's when it works, when the chemistry works, it's a phenomenal experience, and I believe that it really makes you better. It makes you a better human being.